You ought to be the most controversial man in Tai Chi then, Adam. Does it affect you in any way? Excite you?
I wouldn't call it titillating.
Why do you think then that so many people have a problem with Fajin, I guess, and Tai Chi and that side of the art?
People like to bring everything down to their own experience, and their views are formed by their experience, and they can't do it, or they haven't experienced it, so it must be pretend.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny though, isn't it? Because if you actually look at, it's like if I look at the people, like the different groups that we both have that we're not popular with, you could almost cross them over because people aren't so keen on the Fajin that you do. So it's those kind of people. And then on my side, the ones that don't like me tend to be the scholarly ones who sort of stick very closely to scripture and the text and things like that. And even I've had that within Tai Chi, people who are very close to the sort of the way the classics speak. But yet, if you put them together, the classics actually talk about Fajin should be an aspect of Tai Chi, and this is how the internal art should work.
It's because scholars don't have proper experience, and neither do meatheads. Well, I'm not a scholar, so I can't interpret the Chinese, but
yes.
I think that the texts are confirmatory. You can't know what they mean until you can do it. So they can't do it, therefore they can't know what it means. The end.
That's true. I think on the other side of it as well, is I always think it's strange, like some grand master gets to the end of their life, whether it's Tai Chi, whether it's alchemy, meditation, Qigong, Chinese medicine, whatever, who cares? They get to the end of their life, and on their deathbed with their disciples around them, they write down their final words, and what they say is, Tony Waste, hold your center line. Step forward. It's like you would hope that the Grand Master left something a little bit more esoteric than could be passed on in the most basic of the classes, right?
I mean, I think there's something just wrong with the whole culture of sort of obsession with lineage and the master holding this or that. And
yeah,
I mean, lots of old people that have done something their whole life still don't understand it. Yes. And maybe someone learnt from somebody amazing and it doesn't mean anything. Maybe all they have is the name of the person they learnt from. Yeah. And then somebody else has the talent and ability to work something out and they can do it. So, many of these grandmasters probably weren't really.
Yeah.
And some were, and I'm sure they left much more interesting teachings.
It's the same with alchemy. Some of the writings that we follow quite closely in alchemy and Taoism, when you actually look at the accomplishments of the people that wrote them, it's heresy to say so, but it doesn't really sound like they were that great. Like, there's no great story of them achieving much.
Yeah, because they weren't writing what scholars were doing. They were writing and the practitioners were too busy practicing.
Along with that battle between the scholar and the practitioner, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can be both, but it's not normal, not usual.
No, I think it's rare.
When I was training in Ajahn Chah's temples, people, when they would do a work day and, let's say, doing some painting or something, there'd be newspaper lying on the floor.
Yeah.
They'd look down and try and read because that was how deprived of reading and kind of intellectual activity they were, that they were drawn even to that. Okay. Because it's such a practice method.
Yes.
Like the forest method is the practice method, no scholarly input. Yeah. So that affected the way I sort of treat everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's for the worse or the better, I don't know, but it is what it is.
I think I had the same philosophy to give to be not by any monk or tradition really, but by my dad very early on as well. It was like, if you don't understand it, son, just keep going, just keep doing. And I guess in some ways it was easier because it was pre-internet. So it was actually quite hard to get hold of.
There was no information.
Yeah, it was quite tricky, yeah.
Yeah. Now information's everywhere and understanding's nowhere.
Sadly, it seems like that's the case.
The time of misinformation.
I know a government body that can help with that, actually.
Fact-checked.
I think that'd be good if Tai Chi Post came with a fact check.
Maybe I should start one.
I think it's called the Fajin Project.
Yeah, well, that's apparently that you have to be denying truth to be a fact checker. So there they are.
Okay, well, it's been a good month, man, having you here. Here in Bali. I'm glad you came to see. Well, you're the first person actually inside the new podcast studio. Second, I apologize, but the first one to come into the school and kind of see it.
And it's cool, it's really great.
Yeah, it's been a strange retreat. We came here to practice, but then we've had a building site around us at the same time.
It's all right, it's just sound.
It reminded me actually of all the early retreats I did in Asia, first coming out there. You came to Asia younger than me, I think. How old were you when you came to Asia?
Gee, I don't know. I must have been 17 or 18 or something. 18. I
Yeah.
guess.
I was quite a few years after you, maybe 6 or 7 years after.
It reminds you because it's noisy, and Asia is so noisy. And in the fantasy, you think of peaceful, meditative Asia, but no.
Yeah.
It's noisy.
First place I ever did a retreat with a teacher, first time I came to Asia, they did it above a karaoke bar. And I had all these visions of mysticism and quietness, but I had Chinese people singing John Denver Country Roads underneath the building while I was doing it, which was really cool.
It's very hard to find quiet.
Asia is the noisiest place on earth. It's crazy. And then you realize why they valued stillness.
Yeah, well, you have to cultivate it.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to film videos for the program or whatever, when I'm in Asia for 6 months, you can't find it. There's no quiet.
You're more professional than me. I gave up. I just leave the noise in the background.
I think it's there for mine too. I don't know. I never listen to them.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the amount of times I'm trying to explain something, there's a motorbike going past. Those retreats are good though, I think. I think that, to have a completely silent retreat for meditation is not always the best environment to practice in anyway.
Calm and entry if the conditions are perfect or something like that.
Yeah.
Which means you can't take it off the mat. Sound is not disturbing you, you're disturbing the sound, right?
Okay. Explain that a bit.
Well, you're in the way.
Okay, yeah. As in
you're reacting to the sound, okay. If you're more transparent about it, more empty, it's a non-issue.
It is quite amazing how after a while you just learn to ignore it. And I remember being really impressed at the Asianers when I first came here. Like I just used to get really frustrated on the earliest retreats, just really annoyed, and everyone sat there. But then on the other hand, I also thought they were deep in meditative states.
And then you realized they were asleep?
They were asleep, or the illusion was shattered the first time a Chinese monk answered his telephone halfway through a meditation class. Can't talk, I'm in meditation. Which actually made me laugh. It kind of cracked me up in the middle of the hall.
Once again, the experience forms the view.
Yeah.
Not the books.
Your meditation, you did. I'm very interested in it, like your practice out here. Because chatting with you, you were involved in the forest tradition. Up in Chiang Mai, most of you were, right? Or
it was mainly in the northeast. Yeah.
Like Isan?
Isan. Yeah.
Oh, right,
yeah.
Okay. No, it's brutal up there.
Yeah, it's yeah. And the monastery was for sure.
In what way?
Just steel.
Okay.
No power, hardly any sleep, hardly any food, long hours, barely any interaction, just
Yes.
the Dhutanga, like the ascetic sort of,
Okay.
the ascetic rules of Buddhism, which are like extra on top of the standard protocol, are practiced in those traditions a lot. Yeah. I liked it when I was young, for sure. It was great. I mean, it formed me.
Okay, sure.
These days, I wouldn't like it as much, sleeping on the floor and, 3 hours a night, that kind of thing. I'd be more worn down. But when you're young and energetic, you can endure more. Mm-hmm. And I think you should when you're young and build more of a foundation. There are some things you just can't do when you're older.
That's very true. It's very difficult when people come slightly older into the practices. Because what are we, like 40, 42, 43?
44
like
I am.
44, yeah, I'm 42. And I was thinking if I started out in martial arts or meditation or even Neigong now, it would be very difficult to do that training.
Yeah. I mean, even getting
your
legs and your spine just ready even to sit. I mean, it was tough then. Yes. It was really hard for me. It was really painful. But, I mean, if you hadn't trained for decades and you're in your mid-40s, it'd be tough.
Yeah. You fix quicker as well.
When you're young. Well, luckily. Otherwise, I'd be dead, I think.
Yeah, totally. In martial arts as well, the injuries used to heal so quick. You'd be like, oh, I fucked up my knee, and then like 3 days later, it's okay.
Yeah.
These days, I sleep funny and I'm crippled for a week.
Yeah, you fall off the pillow and it's all over.
Yeah. It was like, I think that my training was a little different because I used to very much go and get tuition from teachers. Stay with them just like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. 21 days is quite a common thing in Taoism. They like to do chunks of things in
Yeah.
alchemy for 21
Right.
days. Yeah, that worked for me. That's quite good. But then all my practice after that, I would go away and then work on my own sort of solo outside of the temples and outside of the schools, and come back for more tuition and then go away. And I got used to working that way. I think it was good for me because it stopped me being so dependent on having somebody give me a time, give me a schedule, give me a routine. I learned to practice on my own, which I think a lot of people struggle with.
Well, they go, especially if they go to these kind of organized retreats and stuff like that.
Goenka,
like a
and
Goenka
Vipassana
retreat,
okay.
which I've never done that kind of thing. But in the monasteries I was in, there was no. I mean, there was the morning chant.
Yeah.
At, no, I guess it was 3:30 or something like that.
Even that sounds horrendous.
And then there was the nighttime chant and the meal. But there was no, okay, you're meditating now or practicing now. You were left alone in solitude for 20 hours a day or something like that.
Nah, it's a lot better.
Yeah, well,
It's a lot better.
you become self-sufficient, I guess.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work if you're not. It might work for a little while, but it's false. You're just getting carried.
It's a thing, isn't it? Like, I don't know if you've seen this. Maybe you would agree or not agree. Because I always think with say you've got a tradition, whatever it is, say you've got meditation or maybe something bigger, wider, like Taoism or Buddhism. I always think you've got two kinds of practitioners. You've got the one that's in the heart of the tradition, that's following the route step by step by step. You know, it's very prescribed for them. And they're the kind that might have the timetable on the retreat and things. And then you've got the people on the edge, the kind of loose cannons, the ones that are sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the tradition, if you get what I mean. And I always think the difference between them is that the ones in the tradition that conform very much to the timetable and the exercise you've got to do. The positive for them is they get more support. The negative is I think they glass ceiling, like earlier in what they're doing. Whereas the people that learn to be self-supportive, self-sufficient, sorry, on the edge of the tradition, the downside is you don't have the support, so you're more likely to fail. But the plus side is there's a higher chance that, like, you can go further. Do you know what I mean? It's like a gamble to do things your own way. You can more likely to hit a high
I think
level.
you can go further just because you're on the edge or even outside.
Yeah.
If you're in the dogma, you're trapped by the dogma.
Yeah.
And, all these traditions carry methods, right? Mm-hmm. And they carried methods which produce results, and then the tradition grows up around the fact that it's been producing results.
Yeah.
So you get the outer shell.
Okay.
So they stick to the outer shell so much, and they're spending a lot of time and mental effort and everything and discipline to stick to the outer shell.
Yes.
And maybe not as much on the inner method, and it's sort of all programmed about the way things are going to go and everything. I think you need some kind of a modicum of stepping out to go far beyond that glass ceiling.
I think it's not like you ever hear of any of the sort of really high-level saints, sages, immortals, Buddhas, whatever, that were in the tradition in that way, were they? They were always the people on the outside.
Outcasts, or people doing their own new way or breaking tradition or just not part of it.
That's because you've been in Ubud for a month now. That philosophy's starting to work.
Ready.
I mean, having spent many years around Taoism, it's definitely the case. Like, it's to talk about results is actually seen as negative. Like, if you ever, in Taoism, if I ever ask a teacher, can you do this or can you do that or da-da-da-da, it's almost like you drop the C word or something, or you said something really highly offensive, and you're always told, don't strive for such things, just da-da-da-da. It's like they encourage you into mediocrity so they don't have to prove that anything has actually been achieved.
Oh, so it's perfect for modern culture.
My thoughts exactly. And as you know, I just went to Bhutan to look at the Vajrayana tradition. And do you have anything to say on the Vajrayana tradition?
No, I'm not an expert, but I mean, I've been around it a bit.
Yeah.
I've never met anyone that's sparked me enough in it. Maybe there are people, maybe there aren't. I mean, the methods are... I think they're a bit lost, honestly. I don't mean that they didn't have the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
I just think that a lot of what was actual method, real method, has now become imagining the result.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
maybe they were moving the drops and bringing the channels together or doing this or doing that. And then they have a text, you know, and the text says, oh, this descends, this rises, this happens, you achieve emptiness and bliss. So then they imagine it happening and pretend to have emptiness and bliss.
Yeah.
So it's because the text was describing what happens. And there's some of the how-to that was obviously oral.
Yes.
That maybe is lost, and it's just been sort of handed on, and they all worship the text and repeat the same text, you know, like for conveyor belt or something. And so they imagine it happening, and that's what I see.
That was my thought. It felt like being amongst, you know, and I'm sure it's not the whole of a tradition, it's just a slice of it I saw. But that's what it felt like. It felt like a bunch of guys in a historical society, more than anything else, you know. They were getting together to...
It's obsession with lineage and tradition, right? No stepping out, no doing your own way, no striving to actually realize just this is what the word says, it says this, don't. And it's monotonous, you know.
Yeah, Taoism is, I don't know if it's worse, but it's very similar. Especially, I think, with Chinese traditions have that tendency to look back rather than forwards, which has its strengths, but yeah, you know, like...
You can't look back, though.
Why?
Well, they're not looking back. They're imagining back. Because they weren't there, or at least in this present cycle, they weren't there. So they're only imagining what they think it means back then.
Yeah.
They're not looking.
True.
I mean, some people that are highly attained, of course, can look back, and I think that's one way to rejuvenate methods. That's actually how the forest tradition came about.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. But, can you talk about that?
Well, basically achieving enough samadhi to get a lot of divine eye and seeing how the Buddha taught and what the methods were, and then the blooming of the forest tradition out of the dogmatic counterculture to that, to try and return it to the traditional ways according to monks that claimed this is what the Buddha was doing and they could see it psychically, that kind of thing. Yeah.
The Mavericks, once again.
Yeah, it's always that, right? And I'm sure they were well hated in their time.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think that that pattern is what I've seen from the very, very few. I don't know if your experience is the same as mine. Maybe you've met more, but very few true masters of these arts that I've met in many, many years.
Very, 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 very few.
Yeah, like infinitesimally small, right?
Well, people use the word master to mean old, or somebody that's good at something.
I've met lots of old people.
Same, and lots of people that are good at something.
Yes.
Like maybe they're good at fighting or good at a certain form or something, but that's not a master the way I use the word.
No. For me, a master is to someone to fully realize the full potential of their spiritual path and understand the nature of reality.
They're self-realized completely. That's it.
But the ones I've met, of which tiny number, none of them existed inside lineages. That's the funny thing. They all had a history of being in a lineage at some stage. They'd had connection to it, but none of them lived in that tradition now. And one in particular that was very important to me is very anti-lineage, anti-tradition.
Yeah.
Certainly their current state believes them all to be lost in dogma and stuck and stagnant. And that's had a massive influence upon me, because I think prior to meeting that person, I think I was caught up in that as well to a certain extent. Very black and white, like that has to be done this way. And
with our experiences, our views are shaped. I've met somebody that I consider a master who's in a tradition.
Okay.
But not when I'm alone with him, he's not in the tradition.
Oh, okay.
It's like what they say for the masses, and to keep the tradition healthy and not cause a schism is one sort of strata of talk, and then behind closed doors, it's half the things they would say would be considered blasphemy by the scholars and the sort of dogmatists and stuff like that. Yeah.
There's that thing, isn't it? It's like, there's that idea people don't like, because what you're describing there to me, if I were to look at it in its most negative or positive light, depending how I look at it, would be elitism, right? Existing within the traditions.
Yeah, it is. Well, we are the supreme vehicle and you are the lower vehicle.
I heard a lot of that.
Or, we achieve and you only achieve freedom and not the powers, or whatever.
That was the funny thing in Bhutan. Having never really been around Vajrayana people much, it was like every talk started with much veneration to the ones who came before us, blah, 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 blah. And then the next thing was, and this is the highest vehicle, and there's no point going anywhere else, and no one will ever achieve anything unless you do this. And if you say the name of the Buddha, you're guaranteed to be enlightened in X amount of lifetimes.
That's awesome.
It reminded me almost of being like one of those American self-help coaching course where they're selling you the next course. Had a similar kind of vibe to it.
Collect the next one.
That was the other thing, man. it felt like this is a dumbass's view of the Vajrayana, because I think I understand Taoism quite well. I understand some of the Buddhism. I'm quite these days, but Vajrayana felt a little bit like collecting Pokemon.
Yeah, got to catch them all.
You got to go to every temple to get every blessing. I did the pilgrimage and I got to fit 5 temples in.
Do eat for 5 minutes a day too.
Well, they close at 8 p.m, so I got to fit these temples in so I can collect this initiation from this disciple.
And even by their own admittance, the people that really got it did something simple in the cave for 20 years.
Mm.
They were cave dwelling yogis, not really involved in the...
Yeah.
Once again, they were the fringe dwellers, you know. They weren't doing a million Pokemons.
The loose cannons.
Yeah. It's... I guess you need a spark, don't you? They have to have some spark. If you're just sort of off the conveyor belt, like yes, it's not awake, and it's not alive, and there's no fire.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that happens in all the traditions. It's just it's extremely formalized, and
sure.
You know, like if you read one text, you've read them all. You know, they're all the same. No one ever says to speak out. No one's different. It's sort of just the downfall of lineage.
Downfall of lineage.
Yeah, it's dogmatic attachment to what was before. In Tai Chi and martial arts, back then, like they were amazing back then, or maybe
not from what I saw.
Right.
Like, okay, not hundreds, but from black and white photos.
Yeah.
From the, what's that, 50s?
Yeah.
60s?
Yeah.
They look awesome to me.
Yep.
They look tough.
Yeah.
They look tough. But
well, life was tough.
Technically, they don't look awesome.
Because, once again, you weren't there, so your fantasy about it is always going to be something else, and no one can ever be good. And then you do something that is in alignment with what the stories about the old stories are, you're fake. But they were amazing back then because of the stories, but then if you do it now, you're definitely fake. So, you know, it's a kind of mental illness, I guess.
Yeah. And I said another thing that you've always been in the Chinese arts, right? Apart from when you were really little, I think, martial arts.
Yeah, I did a little bit when I was young of Japanese stuff, but not serious.
So I came from Japanese arts to Chinese arts.
Yeah.
And
hard workers, the Japanese.
It was good. It was good. Lots of discipline, for sure. And that was a real change when I came across to Tai Chi. I went from formally standing in class, militaristic style, to we're going to stop for tea and have a tea break.
Well, my upbringing in the Chinese arts was not like that. It was run like a Japanese military style school.
You did external Chinese arts first as well, didn't you? Yeah.
It was very, very militant and hard. Yeah.
The other thing I saw was in the Japanese arts, I almost think, I don't know about Australia, but in Europe, maybe because we didn't have much of a Chinese immigration compared to places like America, Japanese arts were always a little bit in front of Chinese arts with regards to the politics. So, for example, in the 80s, there was a real Japanese culture worship in the Japanese arts. So if you're white, you're always shit compared to a Japanese person, even if you were technically, it doesn't matter. You're never as good as a Japanese.
They probably still think that.
No, it changed.
In Tai Chi, they still think that.
Exactly, that's my point. That's how far behind the Chinese arts are. Yeah. Whereas the Japanese arts, they kind of moved away from that a bit, and you started to get foreigners being heads of organizations, and a kind of start of, there's always Japophiles, but a start of a movement away from that. But the Chinese arts hasn't gone through that.
In my old Kung Fu school that I came up in, the Chinese Sifu definitely didn't think that. He said the white people are better. He said you're bigger, you're tougher, you're stronger, and you work at least as hard. You've got an advantage.
So I've seen you do something in a video, and then I've seen a Chinese person do the same thing in video. People will dislike yours, but think that one's okay. And I
need plastic surgery.
Well, Asia's a place to get it. It's cheap. But they can't see the disparity between the two. They don't get it. They can't see it.
A lot of the little Asian girls, they get like this. They get their eyelids cut to get double eyelids, like to get Western eyelids. Yeah. They need to get a single eyelid surgery, and then boom, my school will be huge.
Sure, that could be arranged. Get that sorted. Chinese art's like, Taoism, especially like the Taoist arts. The amount of attempts to look Chinese that people do, growing their hair,
it's cosplay.
So they can put
cosplay.
the top knot, complete another cosplay. Sometimes I go to Taoist schools or Tai Chi schools. I shouldn't say Taoist because people do Taoist Tai Chi. We're not really doing Taoism, are they? Like it's a separate thing.
Yeah, sure.
And you go in and it would feel like I'm at a Comic Con convention.
Yeah, totally.
And I go in and I'm thinking, oh fuck, I need to grow my hair. I fucking know. I've got like the problem with my hair is if I grow it, it comes out a weird angle, sort of like some kind of mad ayahuasca-induced shaman. So I can't grow my hair long. But they'd all do that, and I think, oh, I got to look the part because it's Comic Con. And then you get to know the people, and you realise actually it's the same people that go to Comic Con as well. It's not just nerds.
Yeah, well, you know,
it's a word that needs to come back, you know.
No, I use it all the time. It's the perfect description.
Yeah, but it makes you sound like the school bully. It's all the nerds, and then they get angry.
Well, these days, nerds, which is there's so much power, in my opinion, because people that are sort of, let's say, not naturally powerful, are more prone to abusing power.
That's very diplomatic. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see that within Qigong, Taiji, yoga schools, when somebody who was born with no power in a position within suddenly gets a modicum of power. Mm-hmm. It's not real power, is it, running a class? But when 20 people looking at them all of a sudden.
No, but to them it is, because they have no innate power.
Completely.
So it's that, yeah.
And out comes the abuse. Out comes all of the twisted power issues. And, you know, I lived on Koh Phangan, which I'm sure you're familiar with, a large group there that was very prevalent with that kind of abuse of the scene in that area.
Yep.
That's a major problem. It's like you have to, in order to be safe, if you want a better word, you have to come to terms with all of those issues long before you're put in that position of being in power, right?
Yeah, and I think if you work really hard and suffer for a long time, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Because it builds you up and you become robust and able to endure, and you build power before other people kind of give you.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you're not powerful, you've never built power, you haven't earned power, you're just a coward weakling, and then suddenly you get all this control over people, they abuse it every time. And deep down, they're always the bullied little kid or something like that, and it makes them, you know, abuse it.
Younger guys.
Well, they're probably younger guys that didn't have enough power.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I often, it's going to sound horrible, but it's true. There are often guys that didn't have a strong father figure.
I was about to say exactly the same thing. They weren't taught how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, horrible or not, it's statistically a fact that most of the unpleasant behavior committed by men in the world is because they didn't get taught how to be one. And let's face it, a woman can't teach you how to be a man.
No. And I'm happy to say I shirk the responsibility of the martial arts teacher telling you how to be a man as well, unfortunately. So I can't help people through that developmental phase. Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's when I started teaching how many things you would be expected to be. Everything from the therapist, the healer, the life coach, the bank account. It's okay to do that.
Well, definitely the bank account.
There's some expectations on you when you teach that I didn't think would be there. Don't know, you found the same?
Oh, absolutely. It's like you're trying to teach the art, and hopefully the art generates qualities within the students. Yeah. That's not the same thing as you telling them how to do the other parts of life. Yeah. The art's meant to build the qualities, and the hard work and everything's meant to build the juice and everything and the resistance inside you, so that, you know, hopefully you can carry it off the mat or out of the training room or whatever.
Yeah, completely.
But if you don't suffer in the practice, I don't think that happens.
Yeah.
I think the Japanese styles are better for that, actually. Not the style, the culture of the schools.
The way they run it.
Yeah.
It was definitely a more uncomfortable experience than okay, I guess it was a bit later than it sounds like yours was a little different, but often the external Chinese martial arts schools I went to were not as uncomfortable as the Japanese training.
Oh, mine was at least as bad as the Japanese school. Very bad.
Your school in Australia even had a reputation around the world. I'd heard of that school that you were in.
It's bad.
Even though it was on the other side of the planet, over where we sent all you prison types.
Well, the convicts. It's true.
Yeah, I'd never...
But I would have it no other way. Even though I think most of it's unskillful, and in the end I left because I knew I wasn't going anywhere good and all that, but It's what I needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't develop the will. Like I learned how to train, even though I don't use any of that art at all.
Yeah, sure.
How to self-discipline, how to endure, how to focus, how to train.
Exactly.
Which I've never learned how to train in the Chinese, like in the internal arts at all. No. And I actually think the internal arts are way more painful than external arts if you do them properly.
It's a different kind of pain, though, isn't it? It's like a different layer.
It's different, and the real difference, in my opinion, is when you're doing an external art and you're going really hard. And we train hard. Everyone was injured. There's blood. There's bruises. People vomit from pain all the time. It's tough. Because you're kind of external, meaning that your attention is on your opponent.
Yes.
You don't experience suffering in the same way as when you're internalized and your attention's saturating the body.
Yeah, sure.
And when you're super present and internalized and you're also in pain, you can't escape it.
Yeah.
So, your aggression and your forward drive and like the fighting spirit, it switches off the pain.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in the internal arts. You can't go there. You have to stay in a certain state. So, the pain, it might not be more if you could measure it in units, but it's experientially more confronting.
I always used to think as well, external martial arts pain is kind of pain. You can rub it and then kind of move on. Internal martial arts pain, you rub it and it doesn't make any difference because it's like right down near the bone and you still feel that pain.
It's not
the body transforming later on,
It's not going away. It's keeping you up. You can't sleep.
Oh, yeah. And it always, in the morning when you get out of bed, I remember...
Hit by a truck.
Yeah, especially when you were developing the legs and the quad.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Developing the legs and the quad is like growing pains when you're a kid, but on steroids and all the time.
I remember them explaining to me when I first moved into Chinese arts and doing Taiji. Well, first, I just did it like the arts I'd done before. So they're all like leg pain. I'm thinking, all right, well, my
bone
thighs
pain.
and calves a bit. Yeah, and it took about 3 months or something before I felt it. And it's like, okay. Right, it hurt to the bone. Yeah, this is uncomfortable,
Wang says if you can sleep at night, you're not training properly. And that was definitely my experience for the first 10 years or whatever. Yeah.
Mine was staircases.
You can't.
If I had to use the
you
stairs
could use
after
stairs.
class.
That's a magic ability. That's a city.
Yeah.
You climb up the rail.
Then it changes. I mean, these days my training, body's all right, can do that kind of work, but it's just like, how do you hurt at the level of chi, but you do?
Yeah.
Like the pain is, you can't even realize where it is anymore. The localization of it. People are like, where do you hurt? And I'm like,
in my
here?
Being? Here, out here.
Yeah, it's a funny thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't rationalize or talk about these things in a meaningful way with people that don't have the experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything.
No. Which the medium of Facebook is an example of that.
It doesn't really work for that, yeah.
Trying to explain the concept of the sort of later stages of development or intermediate. I don't even think I'm at the later stage of it, but intermediate.
Relatively later to the people you're talking to.
Yes. And we can't put it into words. How do you explain that kind of change and that kind of discomfort and that kind of process that you're trying to take someone through?
Yeah, I mean, the stories and the classics, they're literal.
Yeah.
They're literal.
Yep.
All of those things are real.
People think the Chinese speak completely in metaphors. No, I know. I find them to be very literal.
It's all extremely literal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they think chi isn't a thing. Like, chi is the nervous system or whatever. It's like, we were talking about it the other day. They knew there was a nervous system. They knew that they had arms and legs and blood and breath. Oh, chi is breath, right?
Yep.
Okay. They didn't know you were breathing. They were really. It's so arrogant.
Yeah.
It's
that arrogance carries over
crazy.
into all of these things, isn't it? Like the we understand now because of our intelligent filters, and it's that thing. It's almost what you were saying before about the people going away to train for 20 years. It's like, how can I understand in 5 minutes through reading on a book or Facebook what someone spent 60 years in the mountains in self-isolation, analyzing themselves to understand? Were they analyzing their nerves and their breath?
You're going to trigger me. If anyone's has trained with me knows that I will rant for an hour a day about you can't understand, you don't understand, you will never work it out.
Please rant.
You do.
Yeah.
You do And then even after you get it, you still don't understand. And then you do for a long time, and then maybe you get the right feeling.
Yep.
Then you do for a lot time longer, and then you have insight and understanding. You don't understand, then create the feeling, and then do.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. But everyone goes, I'm smart, I believe in science. So if I understand first, I can imagine and fabricate the feeling, and then I'll get the result. No.
Yeah.
No, the opposite. You just do. Almost blindly, you follow the causes as instructed, hopefully, by a competent teacher. And over a long period of time, you get skill, and after skill, you get understanding, right?
Yeah.
Kung Fu.
Completely.
Yeah.
Shift
Skill,
from a
understanding.
technique to an ingrained quality. And
it transforms you, is what I usually say. It becomes, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's not how you do it, it's who's doing it. It has to change you. It's a transformation. It's you.
Yes.
You change and then you know, not before. And I think that the reason, amongst many, but one of the main reasons why people don't succeed in these arts at all is they want to understand first and do later.
Yep.
So they're asking all these questions on the imaginary ideas about what they think something is going to be, which of course their reference is wrong, right?
Yeah.
Their point of reference is imagined.
Yeah, completely.
They're not there.
Yes.
So it's just... and, I'll lecture on it for an hour, and then someone's next question will be the same again. It's like, okay, just stand for hours. I'm not talking to you anymore.
Yeah, I feel your pain.
Understanding comes from doing.
Yes.
Over a long period of time, yeah. Do you think non-OCD people can achieve in these arts?
I hope not, because that gives me an excuse to be OCD.
You have to have obsession and regular, aka compulsively.
Yeah. I mean, my training is really just an outlet for my mental illness, I think. I mean, I don't know any, what I would call, what's mentally stable? Stable.
Well, you can be stably in the state. It doesn't, stable just means consistent. I'd say you're consistent.
I guess what I'm saying is I can't think of anyone who has a standardized, normal way of thinking that does very well in these arts.
Who does very well in many things in life, but particularly these arts.
Exactly, because normality has to be mediocrity. Right?
Yeah, that's it.
By the definition of how we live, most people have to be mediocre at what they do.
Yeah.
Whether we want to accept that or not.
Well, they don't just have to be, they want to be.
They want to be, do you think?
People fear not being mediocre. People fear being judged, the spotlight. They fear... People say people fear success. I don't get that really, but they do.
I mean, I think they fear criticism because it brings back all the memories when they were criticized as a child.
Well, then definitely don't do fudging.
This is funny, actually. How long ago did I meet you? 7 or 8 years ago or something like that?
I have no idea, but yeah. Whatever.
Something like that.
Maybe less than that, but yeah, years.
And the thing
Maybe
that...
more like 6 years, I think.
I hope you don't mind me saying, but the thing that struck me when I met you is even 7 or 8 years ago, I knew who you were before I met you. And then when I met you, just because I seen you online, is I was already aware of just how much abuse you get online.
I'm the king of being abused. Everyone has a talent.
But I was very surprised how... it didn't shake you at all. No. Like, it doesn't bother you at all, right? No, it was very impressive. And there's been a couple of periods when I've seen people say things, and I see the usual stuff. Adam's blah, 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 whatever, okay. But then sometimes it's something very personal,
just
very
cruel.
Offensive, just cruel. Yeah, cruel, that's the definition, cruelty. It's no longer critique, it's cruelty.
Yeah.
And it doesn't faze you.
Well, it shines on them. It shines the light upon them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Also, I mean, if you criticized me, I would feel it. Okay, and there are a few other people, not many, less than a handful, less than I could count on one hand, that it would matter to me. So people often write to me and say, it's amazing the way you're so thick-skinned.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, I'm not thick-skinned, I don't care what they think.
Yeah.
There are people that I really care what they think.
Yes.
And whatever they say will hit me very hard. And there are people that don't know me.
They
don't know me.
Exactly. I came to similar conclusions because since I've known you, my hate has gone up, actually. I think in some way...
For me?
tarred with the same brush. I think, because sometimes I think, So
Guilty by association.
So yeah, that has happened. And I came to similar conclusions. I think at first it was certainly moving into, well, within our very niche field, slightly more into the public eye. I remember like, oh my God, wow, these people really don't like me. And then after a few weeks...
no, it's just Adam.
It's just, well, sometimes they get us mixed up, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say things, actually, I think, hang on, Adam did that, not me. But I came to the conclusion that I started actually looking at what they were doing. Especially with social media now, you can click and look, oh, right, that's what they're doing. And like, oh, yeah, okay, and yeah, your opinion isn't valid.
No.
And that's how I came to terms with it as well.
Yeah.
And then I think, exactly. If anyone that I ever feel was really, okay, that person really knows what they're doing, yourself, or certainly my teacher.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah, it would be crushing.
It would be, completely.
Yeah.
That would be a very, very different thing.
That's why I mean it's not thick skin. It's which opinions matter.
But I sometimes think I'm lucky that the internet only really came around when I was already kind of established in what I was doing as well. I think the same for you.
Well, our timeline are almost identical. I think we opened our school the same year.
Pretty much.
It's 20 years next year, right?
I know. Yeah.
Something like that. I think we're
old.
Yeah. But I think we had kind of parallel lives in many ways, including the timing of the schools and stuff like that.
You just have better weather because you grew up in Australia.
Not just Australia. I've sort of always been in a perpetual summer my whole life.
Yeah. Well, feel for me. I had to do my training in rain, grey, snow, and sludge.
Oh, that's why you're tougher.
That's why I'm full of damp.
I'm going to have a coconut water and a snooze on the hammock.
Sounds great. Yeah, but did you know, I think it was about 24, 25 when the internet really started to, maybe a bit older, 25, 20, something like that, or whatever.
I guess it was, yeah.
And I always think that many of my formative years in martial arts were already kind of done by then.
Oh, they're definitely pre.
Yeah.
Totally. The internet existed, I guess, but not for us.
Wow, it was like... yeah, exactly. And you had to...
Yeah.
I think how difficult would that have been for that to exist while I was making all my mistakes and, being shit and really bad, like all those formative years. I think it would have been a lot harder. So I you know what I mean? Like I feel for the... It would have been harder, but I think, at least personally, I would have put myself out there. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I would have hidden us a little bit more.
I was extremely introverted, just a student and obsessed, but in the shadows, just doing my thing and certainly not trying to be out there. In fact, I never tried to be out there. Like other people did it for me.
Yeah.
They totally built the school. They put me online. They did all that. And I was like, oh, whatever. What's YouTube? I didn't even know what it was.
I know. I've seen you try to use even the most basic of
even
machines.
Now. Which in the computer.
It's a good job you have a wife who can sort all that. Yeah. I mean...
She keeps me alive.
It's the same... here's an interesting... I don't know if people want us to talk about this because it's probably only relevant to people who are running schools and things. But one of the things I think is really funny is everybody has the same when they have a school, right? They have a website, social media, and their school, their classes or whatever, and then you write things on social media. But if those things become successful, then you get accused of excessive marketing or... Yeah,
you're all about promotion.
You're all about promotion, all about... Yeah, but the only difference... But they do the same things.
Yeah, but nobody watches them.
Exactly. And there's I think of some of the critics I have, and I'm sure it's similar with yours, and they're like, I'm more authentic because I have one student.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, which could be true, actually. I mean, you think my teacher has very few students.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's...
a correlation is not causation.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very, very different thing.
That's awesome.
So here's a funny thing I noticed. I'll tell you a little short story, and I'm sure you can rant on it. I'll create a soapbox for you, if you want.
I'm not very good on the soapbox. We'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, it's obviously with alchemical texts, which I know you're familiar with as well. I know you have an interest in the sort of Taoist alchemy texts as well. Is that very much when they talk, it's about kind of poetical things of the lead and the silver and the gold and fire, tigers, dragon, lots of colors and lights and things like that. And they have lots of really descriptive kind of terms to describe how things are. And then what I've seen is, the way I was taught very much is these are figurative for visual, auditory, physical phenomena that are known as positive signs that you're moving in the right direction. The idea being that whenever you train, there's a whole plethora of phenomena that can arise, but most of them are nonsense. So it seems produced by whatever,
It's just phenomenon,
just
rolling
phenomena.
on and on.
So even the recognition that phenomena isn't valid, within the classics, they point to like a path through the phenomena, that one's useful, that one's useful.
There's no path without phenomena.
Exactly.
Yeah. Without the trees on the side, where's the path?
So what I see is that those poetry, when I started to look into the wider sort of tradition, by many people are interpreted as instructions. So you are supposed to visualize.
Well, we were talking about before with the imagination.
Completely.
It's in the Vajra path, but also in Taoism, like the Big Dipper and the lights coming down into you, something like that.
Yes. Yes. The limitations of such practice, right?
I read about that one when I was a teenager or whatever. And
the Big Dipper?
Yeah.
Okay,
that kind of stuff. And
did you try it? Have you ever worn silk pajamas?
Yes.
For training, I mean?
No.
Oh, right, okay. Okay.
For sleeping.
Yeah.
But I just laughed. I laughed. And my mum laughed. And we all had a laugh.
The same. Yeah, the same. I remember being in the Japanese arts and looking at what people were doing, and I was really anti-Chinese arts for many, many years.
It's understandable.
Because what I saw was like that. The martial arts were like tiger claw, mantis, blah, blah, like all this. And I was like, that's a bit weird. And on top of that, all of the sort of practice of visualizations people did, stepping in the shape of the 7 stars to summon the deities and all that kind of stuff. And it really put me off. And then eventually when I accidentally stumbled into the Chinese arts because of meeting a teacher, Shen, who could do such things and that.
Experience.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't understand how people are happy doing that. What do you think? How can you...
Okay.
Would you be happy... Right.
No.
Would you be happy imagining a tiger on one side and a turtle on the other, phoenix behind you or in front of you?
I think all such practices that are exclusively evolved in the strata of mind, not consciousness, not chi, not body,
right?
Mind stuff.
Well, you're a Buddhist. You're not going to like that.
No, mind stuff is the least stable, the least self, the most bullshit part of the experience.
Yes.
And you're better off identifying with the body than the mind stuff.
Yeah. At least it's got a tangible reality to it, right?
The mind stuff arises and falls away. It's bullshit.
Yes.
So if it's a fabrication.
Yep.
In the worst sense of the terms, like a magical illusion, it is.
Yes.
It is Maya. It is delusion. It is, So, okay, let's say your whole practice is based on that.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be a no-brainer.
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
I would have thought so, yeah.
The part of you that matters least, the part of you that's least stable, the part of you that's in flux, the part of you that's not you, that's not stable, that has no reality.
Yes.
Yes, doing certain practices can affect that part of you, but not the other parts of you.
Well, that's a nice way to describe it. That's a good way of explaining it. That's actually a very diplomatic way of explaining it too.
I'm nice.
So, if, I mean, this is it's been the hardest thing for me. Like, there's certain things that are a hard sell is a funny word when you teach, or the big arguments that I have with people, or the big disagreements.
The controversial
is the visualization, right?
That's a big one.
Their idea, I'm sure you've had similar things.
It's visualization, it's sex practice, it's this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Let's stay on the visualization.
So, the argument that I get from many people is they believe that when you're forming these shapes, you're forming in the yi, right? Within the yi, the yi. And this is then leading and generating the movement of chi. And then often what they do is they equate this with the scientific studies of people that imagine shooting hoops.
The basketball.
And then they score more hoops in the next game or something.
I mean, if they equate it with that, it means they have no experience in internal practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
They're not related.
So I already know what your answer to this is anyway, but it's just interesting, I think, to discuss this. If that doesn't generate the chi, how does the yi generate the chi, in your opinion? And if the yi doesn't generate the chi, how do you generate the chi?
Well, I think it does partially generate the chi, and it, more importantly, it helps you access the chi. Everyone has some chi, otherwise you're dead.
I would hope so.
Yeah, but then of course there's the chi of practice on top of that and everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's we talk about this. I think you talk about the same thing. The mind fluid saturating the body.
Yeah.
And I usually describe it as ink in blotting paper.
Okay, that's very artistic. I talk about water soaking into a sponge.
It's the same
Yours
idea.
is a lot nicer. Yeah.
So if you can't do that, you can't access the chi. You can't build chi at a fundamental basic level. You can't do internal arts.
Yeah.
And so learning in my system, many years in the beginning are almost exclusively dedicated to learning how to do that to a very profound degree.
To soak in the mind into the body.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
At a nano level.
Yes.
Through the not so globally and granularly.
Yeah.
And they do that for many years. And I think if you can't do that well, you can't access/build chi.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to do that, and it has to be balanced by a modicum of stillness.
Yeah.
So you have to be doing it in a state of stillness.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first step for internal arts.
I agree.
Any of them.
100%. And I guess if you had to precursor something before it, it would be to open the body so the mind fluid could even get into the body in the first place, right?
I think they're not before and after, but yeah, I mean, I think they're more like
parallel.
One step of opening, so you open more, it allows the mind to penetrate more, which gives you more access to open more. You open more and more, it's sort of that, like a ladder going, alternating, and they're both endless as far as I can tell. I mean, I've been opening for so long, and right?
Well, we've just done another month of opening.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You know, where's the end of these things?
Yes.
And what does it really mean to be absorbed into the body and open? At what level? I mean, basically, like the muscular system's open, the fascia's open, you know, the basic channels are open, the deeper channels are open, and, you know, not even worrying about consciousness and
causal body.
Spiritual stuff,
blah, blah,
I mean, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a similar process within...
Opening and sinking is what I talk about in Taiji.
Okay.
And part of that sinking into the body, the saturating.
Yep.
And opening. So those two are the primary causes.
Sure.
And it goes further, but if you don't have them down, it's a dead-end path. So if you imagine...
Yes.
Right. That means you're fabricating something that's not real. You're not saturating. Your mental fluid is doing something else.
Yeah.
It's
completely.
dissipating. It's dispersing. And that's why those people that do that all get real skinny and weird and sort of
parched,
dry.
Yeah.
Dried up.
Yeah.
And you can see people when they've developed the chi because they don't look like that.
Yep.
You can tell every time.
I described them as the vacuum-packed people.
Yeah. Yep. And it should be basic. It's the fundamentals of the practice, I think. And I think any real system does that.
Yeah.
All of them.
That was really interesting when I met you, was how few... We had a few differences in the way we do things, but there was very few major clashes.
Well, even the differences are trying to achieve the same thing through a different route.
Yeah, the core things were always the same, right? The core causes or the core methods or whatever had their kind of similar processes. And the thing for me within something like Neigong is that the flesh doesn't come alive until the mind is inside the body.
No, but it literally is dead flesh.
Completely, yeah.
And people can't articulate that flesh.
Yeah.
So when somebody has saturated the body, they can move in a profound way where the ripples move through the body. And
leverage is gone.
They've got the chi.
Leverage is gone.
They're way past leverage, I mean, they're in the small parts. They're in the cavities, the little cavities, let's say. And so I think that's sort of, you're inside the door.
And that to me is where the chi is produced, right?
I think that's a big part of it,
Yeah, so when the mind is in and then the tissue comes alive, then there is a chi production factory within the body. And then everything after that is how to take that chi and do whatever you want to do with it. Draw it into the dantian or send it out to the limb, or whatever it is people are doing within their tradition.
I often say that the interaction between mind and body produces chi.
Yeah, completely.
And that's pointing at the same thing, I guess.
Yeah.
You're not imagining it in and out of the trees or from the Big Dipper or whatever.
Yeah.
Chi is produced in the body.
Yeah.
There are other energies like Shakti or whatever, but chi is produced in the body for sure. I'm not saying there's not chi outside that you can affect. There is. But if you can't even produce and access it in your own body, forget about that. No chance, right?
And the more chi is produced inside the body, the more it draws from outside anyway. You're like trying to absorb it from...
Chi attracts chi.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, to stand there and try to absorb it from the 7-star dipper
Well, they are absorbing it in the mind strata. You know, the one that ends the second you stop doing it.
Yeah, sure, yeah, completely, yeah.
So this is the sort of misunderstanding that chi is just a process, chi is just a feeling, it's just the nervous system. They don't realize it's actually a substance.
Yes, yeah.
Now I have to make a confession.
Okay.
When I started, I thought it was a substance, and then I got indoctrinated by people that it wasn't.
Okay.
For a little while, and then I realized again it was a substance.
I think I went through a similar process as well, actually.
Yeah, I think that happens,
Yeah. To me, I think the part of the problem is with me as well, like the way I explain it to people that I teach is that chi can be different thicknesses.
Definitely.
So the chi, when it's very thin, what you do is you feel it in the sort of peripheral nerves and on the surface of the skin. So what it feels like is like, say, ants running on
like
the
the
skin.
very first week of training feeling.
Completely, yeah.
Oh, wow, I've got the ants crawling.
Exactly.
Like that took 1 hour.
Or the bubble.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and they stick with that, right?
They're useful at the very first week.
But if you get stuck with it, you will assume that now the chi is your nervous system.
I mean, it's just nowhere near enough. It's just, actually what they're doing is helping you get inside your body.
Yeah.
Because the easiest way to access the body is sensation, right?
Yes.
So they give people into the sensation, and at some point, baby steps are necessary for babies. It's good.
Yeah.
But it's just like...
Still flesh.
Yeah.
Still dead flesh. Because it has to thicken enough that it can soak into the tissues, right? Which to me was the basis of the sin that the chi got.
We're talking about controversial.
Is the I Ching controversial?
Well, I mean, everyone thinks it's a stretching yoga set.
Oh, right.
Done by people wearing the orange robes.
There's a fancy Taoist blue-robed version as well, actually. Yeah. The Chinese.
I think it's a set.
Yeah, the Chinese sports science government Qigong authority.
They probably invented it. I don't know.
Yeah, they did. They created it in about the sort of 1970s or 80s.
It's like silk reeling and stuff like that.
Yeah. Modern creations. Yeah, I forget that that's controversial, because the I Ching to me is that. It's the soaking of the mind into the tissues and the thickening of the chi till the flesh comes alive, so that the chi is produced in the factories of the body, meaning that at least the earlier stage of the channels can start to open. But in order for that to happen, you have to have fluid, right?
It's about opening the channels.
You have to have a substance.
You need chi.
You need chi.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, people think, oh, that's Shaolin, that's not Tai Chi, that's not Taoist. It's fundamental in all the internal arts.
Yeah, completely.
It's because it's not a set. It's like a piece of the path of practice.
Yes.
A necessary one.
And I think that those externalized sets that people create that are based on something, generally, as far as I can see, they're stretching. They're kind of opening exercises, as far as I can see.
Which opening is incredibly important for what we're talking about.
Yes.
I don't think it's wrong. It's just wrong. And you're not telling me the secrets. When are you going to teach me how to fight?
Sure.
I'm trying to change you into something that when they move, the jinn happens.
Yeah.
When they do anything, the chi is mobilized. Like you change who you are via saturating, developing certain mental qualities, and definitely transforming the body.
Yeah.
Doing the I Ching.
And that's really interesting, because that there is really the core of what Fajin is about on a kind of deeper level beyond fighting, isn't it? Really, that what you have is a way of expressing a kind of how good is your mental
it shows a
quality
level of
on
transformation.
The inside. Completely.
That's what, you know why what started all the hate, why everyone hates me? Is
Why?
Because I said...
I think it's because they can't pronounce your name. I think that's what it is.
Mizner.
Mr. Mizner.
I said, and
I used to call you Mr. Mizner.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was Meisner.
Who knows?
Yeah.
In Germany, they'd probably say it like that. But
Okay.
So, and I still say that Fajin is entry-level skill.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean first skill, but you're inside. It means you're inside.
In people's defense, it's not a very accessible entry-level skill, though.
No, but there's a lot of work to do before you get through the door.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
So if you can do it, you're internal.
Yep.
If you can't do it, you're not internal. Basically, something like that. The transformation to getting there, and yes, Fajin, it's not about using it for this or that. It means you have internal skill.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, a lot of the internal skills, a lot of the ones we work on when we're together, are invisible to the outside world.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what, just take my word for it?
Exactly.
You have to have something that is observable.
So many times I heard that when I asked teachers all through Asia and also through the West. I wouldn't ask them this directly.
No, of course.
Rude.
It's Asian culture too.
After a while, get to know them. Can I see something? And they would simply say, "It's all internal."
Well, that means they don't have it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I came to learn. I didn't know that at first.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, fucking hell, I don't have the discernment.
I'm too crude.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm just a caveman. But yeah, I came to realize.
Well, the way people think that is, it's like their little backdoor exit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the point of an internal transformation if it's not manifest to some degree, even not perfectly in the realm of like the physical? You know what I mean? Like it has, because
they all are anyway.
You have to transform physically.
Yeah. I mean, even the most spiritual,
yes,
meaning subtle.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if there's an art that's not about the physical transformation and not about the showing the powers, it's Buddhism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But they still achieve the crystal bones. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are pretty observable states.
Yeah.
If I can't observe something, I don't believe you.
Yes.
I don't believe you.
Yep.
I just don't believe you.
Which is funny enough.
You're a good talker, okay. You're charismatic, okay. You know the text, okay. Irrelevant, right? Show me.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's interesting that I always had a problem with the people, I was never taken in by the nice words. Now, I grew up around Glastonbury in the UK, which is similar to Ubud, Copanyan, or
Bean and everything.
I always grew up in the hippie areas, right? And so I was surrounded by people with the nice words, you know, the nice language.
It's the opposite of my upbringing, but yeah.
Well, yeah, you were out in convict land, weren't you?
Yeah, and it really is, even amongst Australia, where I am from, is the most sort of like gangstery and rough and violent and just not. There's no spiritual scene at all.
What, in Australia at all? Or just where you were from? Okay, right.
From. It was
because the Byron Bay is your hippie.
Yeah,
area,
but that's a few hours from me.
Right. Okay.
There was down there, but yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up around all these people with all these words, and I very quickly saw through it, because one thing I realized is the people that were in those kind of subjects kind of had that way of speaking before they even got into the art. Do you know what I mean?
Read a book, got the words, I'm done.
Completely. It's like the amount of people that do yoga that are already flexible and thin anyway.
You go to the class and it's full of beautiful, slender, flexible women starting yoga.
Completely. So it's hardly a sign of attainment.
No.
To be that way anyway, right? So the language and the words always seem like an odd thing to me, because if you meet an internal teacher who knows what they're doing, there should be a field of influence around
I
them,
agree,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Based upon that?
Yes. Should be disorientating.
Yeah.
Is the word I would
put on it affects you for real.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, they don't have the juice.
Completely. Yeah.
And they have fancy talk and they talk about this and stories about the past and they say wise and compassionate words. So what?
They have tea ceremonies.
Yeah. Or they sit perfectly or whatever. I sit perfectly and I speak slowly and I sound profound.
Yeah.
And I have beads and I only eat mung beans.
You know, I tried that for one course once. I did a workshop once and I decided that's how I would be. I lasted like half an hour and I just started
tired.
laughing. Yeah. I couldn't sustain it. People could see through my rubbish.
Pretending it would be tiring.
That's a major thing, right? So back to teaching as a subject, I'd be interested to get your take on this. One thing I was always told by, you always get advisors, people around me, especially because I was quite young when I started teaching, too young.
Same as me.
Shouldn't have been teaching, to be perfectly honest. I caused all kinds of problems.
I was always younger than every student. It was weird. It made me feel weird.
Yeah. Youngest guy in the Taiji class, right? Yeah. Pushing hands with Ethel or whatever. But I always used to get advice about, like, you must be this way, you must be that way, you must have boundaries, you must be aloof, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't sustain anything.
Oh, like you must act like a master, something like that.
Yeah. And I would always get advice this.
How about no?
Completely, yeah.
I'd rather drink whiskey and smoke a cigar.
Talking of which, I'll pour some more whiskey. So I've never been a whiskey drinker, but this is growing on me.
My experience is that all the things I thought I didn't like in life were things I hadn't had a good one yet.
You mean the bottles of Jack Daniels I've been working my way through, haven't been doing it? Yeah.
The problem is if you're pretending, it will affect you at a deep level and it will screw you up.
Yeah.
You have to be authentic, sincere, and have integrity, right? Integrity is being authentic to yourself.
Yes.
And I think if you screw up there, that's the end.
Well, I've seen people that almost went into, I think I would say, mental illness or certainly mental fabrication of their world because they weren't honest with who they were.
I've seen people totally break, for sure.
Yeah. It's dangerous. Anytime you're spending any time taking your mind, which I think is supposed to be out there, that's the natural thing for your mind, isn't it? You're supposed to be thinking, looking, hearing, interacting with the world, and then you're putting it inside for long periods of time. I don't think that's natural.
Well, nothing about these arts is natural.
No, I agree.
They are the
Completely.
opposite of natural. The Buddha calls it swimming against the stream.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. The Taoist story is this fish that swims against the stream and turns into the dragon, right?
They took it from the Buddha.
I'm sure. But that idea, like, as soon as you take that and then you put it inside, I think it is risky. I don't think it's risky in like you'll have a heart attack kind of thing.
Well, that can happen too.
That's global warming. But I think there's a risk of that loss of sense of reality as quite...
I've seen it happen. I've seen people go from relatively okay to a broken person. And not once. Many times. That's why I'm anti-imagination. Yeah,
me too. Yeah. It's not just because I don't have one.
In the end, you don't know anymore what you fabricated, what you didn't fabricate, and then you believe your own bullshit, and you're a broken person.
Yeah.
That's really sad, but it happens. And maybe they were sincere in the beginning.
Yep.
But the wrong method corrupted their mind, and it perpetuates out into the body, and they become sick as well physically.
Yeah.
But the spirit also gets corrupted. It's just all bad. It's all bad. Yeah, it's... I mean, I just had another podcast recently with somebody, and it turned out that I started talking a lot. They questioned me about visualization and imagination, and I was kind of critical of it, and maybe it's going to come across the wrong way, but I've seen it break people more than once. You have to be real.
Yeah.
And you have to be normal first.
Yep. That's key.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Let's stop there. That's a phrase that I've heard you say, and also it's one of those phrases that to me has been a parallel with something I've said to people as well.
A lot of the things we've talked about, and they're almost like, what?
I know,
It's the same thing.
The same kind of terminology come up is I've said to people, you have to achieve a certain degree of normality or normalcy before you can aim for above normal, like super normal or whatever.
Can you keep a girlfriend? Can you keep a job?
Yes.
Like, how's your emotional life? How's your sex life? How about sila and normalcy, functioning as an adult? How about that? Sure. If you can't do that, forget about spirituality. And for a lot of people, that's their challenge for this life.
Yeah.
It is. Some people...
It's a big challenge for some people.
Well, a lot of the population, that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
That's what religion's for.
Or the alternative, you can also see now on social media, who are the people that are most popular? To me, it's the people that are talking about how to be normal.
How to achieve normalcy.
How to live, yeah. The
and
advice
I think it's good.
Jordan Peterson, people like that.
I mean, it's like, wow, he's a genius. It's like, okay.
He's telling you
I like him. It's cool. It's logical. It's basic logic.
I agree.
You have achieved basic logic, and it's profound because we're in the Kali Yuga.
Should have been told as a child growing up, right?
Where was your daddy?
Yeah,
so,
totally, yeah.
Basic normalcy is profound in this time.
Yes.
But I think that's what people need. And I often think, you don't need to do this art. Why don't you go away?
I get that with a lot of the younger ones in the school that want to, they talk to you and you can tell they want to be a monk. They want to be a renunciate.
Well, they're running away from their broken experience of life.
Yeah, totally. I tell them, go run a business first. Go get a job. Go be successful. Go have a life. Go fuck up a few times.
Experience life.
And then come back and then do this. In the meantime, run this alongside your life, but not instead of. Because that level of normalcy must be achieved. Yeah, that normality.
I've seen that people that are skilled.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about masters, because when we talk about masters, we're both talking about the same thing. There are hardly any in the world.
Let's come back to that in a minute and define those.
Okay, but first... Just people that are skilled, not a master, journeyman, not a beginner.
Yep.
Also can do life very well.
Yeah.
Whatever they do well.
Yeah.
They have functional relationships. They're not struggling to exist. They can do life because that's the basic foundation.
Yep.
And all of the great religions have some form of sila, the commandments, something like that. The basic foundation for the masses, which is something I think is missing in the modern sort of secular, government worshipping, satanic, broken culture that has thrown away traditional morals and stuff like that, and responsibilities that when you try to live up to the responsibilities, you achieve normalcy.
Yes.
And because they haven't achieved normalcy, if they do spiritual work, it just makes them broken.
And here's a funny thing. It's out of all of the... I know that there's a backlash towards traditional norms or traditional values at the moment.
Certainly not from me.
No, certainly not for yourself. But I think it's safe to say the norm in society is to push back against that. We're in a sort of post-traditional age where we sort of critique everything, right? And I think the education systems teach you to critique, and I think that's kind of passed through. Now, the funny thing is I see is out of all of the scenes that are going against traditional values, martial arts should be the last scene to go against traditional values because it's a traditional art. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that is strange.
It has gone against traditional values. Martial arts has become sport fighting.
Well, what it's become, but it's not what it should be, right?
No, sport fighting is not martial
art. If you're a traditional artist, you should follow traditional ideals, right?
Yes.
That's what was logical to me.
Yes.
So I am confused by the way that it's become. It's almost become very, I guess the hippie scene kind of mixed in with it a little bit, didn't it?
It all started in the 60s and it's perpetuated out.
Yeah. I didn't ever have those kind of teachers. So all of the teachers
I've never had one
quite
like that.
Traditional.
Same.
Yeah.
Because people that achieve are like that.
They have normalcy,
Well, it's the base. It's the base. And it's arrogant to think everyone for thousands of years and all of the great masters and the heads of the great religions and all the great thinkers and all of them were wrong, but I know better. That is a profound level of arrogance and self-importance.
Yep.
But that's the standard view now.
Well, you are trained to critique everything. So even at university...
You're not allowed to critique that which they're propagating.
No, that's very true. But you're supposed to critique the great classics and the great writings, say you do a degree on history.
I think that withdrew once upon a time.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. It's learning how to think, right?
Yeah, sure.
But now that's not what they do.
You mean it's to rebel? Or?
Well, now they just get taught a new version of propaganda.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure.
And they don't even look at those old things anymore. They're banned. Burn the books.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not anti-critique at all. The problem is to think that you know better.
Yeah, okay.
You don't. You can't even keep a girlfriend, keep a job, like feed yourself, take care of your family. You can't even function as an adult. And you're critiquing and thinking that you are sort of elevated into some position to criticize the greatest minds in recorded history.
Because everybody has an opinion.
And everyone's opinion is equal.
Sure. It's
Well, I don't think everyone's opinion is equal. That's why I don't care about all the hate.
That's what I was worried about speaking about. Like, do we go down that route?
No,
I mean, that's the thing. That's the greatest thing about the internet is everyone has an opinion. But the worst thing about the internet is everyone has an opinion, right?
The stupidity is to think that they're all valid.
Yeah.
They're not valid. If you can do, you're allowed to have an opinion on that subject.
It's like I wouldn't have an opinion on motor mechanics.
Well, you go in and tell them what to do, and you'd be insane.
Yeah.
They'd go, "You're insane. Get out of the shop. Let me do my job," right? So why doesn't that happen in other fields?
No, and I don't understand how in the internal arts as well that there's, we're all or everyone's working towards achieving this particular thing, and yet when someone achieves it, it's considered wrong. It's like a sustaining of the mediocrity of the materialism of the kind of art.
I don't get it because my nature is when I find somebody that I admire or does something that I want.
Yes.
I want to know them. I want to be around them. I want to be like them.
Well, like rich people do. They surround themselves with other rich people, right? They don't surround themselves with brokies.
No brokies.
Which is a phrase that's becoming quite popular these days. But they surround themselves with people of a similar mindset and da-da-da.
If you want to get good at something, go to somebody that's good at it.
It's not rocket science.
Step one.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to learn the piano, you go to somebody that's good at the piano. You observe, does this person that's good at the piano make other people good at the piano? If yes, you do what they tell you.
Yes.
There's 3 steps. Are they good at it? Do they make people good at it? Do what they tell you. Right? So that's for something external, easy to see, easy to perceive, material.
Sure.
Now the internal arts, often immaterial, hard to perceive, difficult to see, hard to understand. All the more reason to follow those principles.
Sure.
But instead they go, oh, the internal arts, hard to see, hard to perceive. I'm not going to follow those principles. Why am I not getting it? What could it be?
Yeah.
I can work it out.
And not only that, is I will go against what the stories of the people that used to be able to do it in the past used to do.
That is weird.
So it's not even not following, it's actually completely going against what is stated.
Go against it, just don't say that you're part of that art.
Yeah, that's true.
Tai Chi people that don't believe in Fai Jin, or like any of the Tai Chi skills.
Qigong people that don't believe in Qi.
Chinese medicine people that don't believe in Qi.
It's universal across the UK universities, from what I've heard. I shouldn't say universal. There's probably one university listening really annoyed because they're exception, but
it's most
that are told that Qi is a metaphor and it doesn't exist on day one of their acupuncture training.
Well, no wonder they suck.
Yes.
Because I've been to many and I am just like, whoa.
Acupuncturists, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, I was like, this is shit.
Yeah, they just put needles in your body. Like an ear piercer.
It was many years before I met people that could really do it.
Yeah, sure.
It's just like, wow. I don't blame you for thinking it's pretend.
Yep.
If that's the only experience, once again, your experience forms your views.
Sure.
But it's not that. You need internal skill.
I can see why it would disappear, though. If you're turning something into a 3-year degree or a 5-year degree in America, how would you guarantee the cultivation of Qi for people?
It takes 3 years to access your Qi.
Completely. Yeah, so it would be kind of impossible. It would be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
In Chinese medicine, running a Chinese medicine college, it is a challenge like that. And there's almost like another hurdle you have to get over where people have come in often from educations from other Chinese medicine places.
Nerds.
Yeah, and you have to start again. You have to say, no, this is a real, actual substance that we're trying to work with and develop. But on top of that, more than that, as a practitioner, you have to have Qi.
Absolutely.
The same as a Tai Chi teacher has to have some Qi, and the Qigong teacher has to have some Qi. A tattooist has to have some tattoos or it's weird, The Chinese medicine practitioner has to have some Qi, has to have a robustness and ability to move and mobilize that energy out of the body in order to treat the patient, right?
I agree, and yet at least half, let's say 98% of the ones I meet, robust is not the word I would use.
No,
weak.
That's strange, huh?
Weak, neurotic, sick.
Yes.
Unable to endure the experience of existence.
Yep.
That's the base, isn't it?
You have to, and it's back to that idea of you have to have the skills for life that you would for the art, and that's the story of Buddha, isn't it? When he meets the fortune teller or whatever.
You mean when they tell the story about he's a baby and stuff? Yeah. He's going to be the great king, the monarch of the world, or the great sage.
Same.
Gee, what's that telling you?
I don't understand how people can't understand that story. It's saying the same qualities are needed to be the world leader as it is to be a great, profound, spiritual...
The signs of a great man, right?
Master, which means Joe Biden could be a highly profound meditator if he just had the right teachers. That's what that means.
That's the best.
There's plenty of images of Donald Trump as a Buddha.
Yeah, it's amazing, that statue. Have you seen it? The one where he's like sitting there as a monk?
I bought you one.
Well, where is it?
It's in England, actually. I need to post it to you. I bought you one. I just got a mouthful of water. So how does it feel to be a soulless Buddhist?
That's pretty good.
Tell me, because you are, to me, a miserable Buddhist. So, because I think Buddhists are quite miserable.
They're miserable, general. I agree.
They are miserable, right?
It's like deviant Taoists, miserable Buddhists.
We are deviant. That is true, yeah. Or clinging, I think is the word you used for me before in the past.
Not for you, for Taoists.
So what's going on? Like, to me...
A misunderstanding of the teaching.
Yeah, so the question is, if people don't know what I'm teasing you about or joking about, is, to me, the soul is all important in these arts.
Of course.
Why don't you have a soul if you're a Buddhist?
You do.
Please explain away. Because I have had this discussion with Buddhists, because people come into the school, and the Buddhists I've had this discussion with, and the hardest concept for them to accept, other than chi, is a soul.
You mean dried up nerds? People that don't really do any work, that they read heaps of scriptures though.
The vacuum-packed Buddhists.
Yeah, the vacuum-packed, dried up.
Yeah, so come on, why are you a soulless Buddhist? Explain it to me.
Anatta, right? Anatta.
Yep.
Not self.
Yep.
Primary teaching of the Buddha.
Which is what they would, I guess most Buddhists would say, indicates that there is no thing that is eternal that carries on, right?
I guess they can't read.
Okay, yeah, so please.
Well, in Facebook how people read your comment and they say a billion things that have nothing to do with what you said.
About 70% of the time.
Yeah, well, that's how they read the scriptures. So
okay.
It's that. Yeah. Okay, so the Buddha went to great pains to list all these things that are not Atman.
Okay.
Not the soul.
Yeah.
Just that should be enough for any thinking man.
Sure.
If he was just saying there was no soul, he would have just said there is no soul.
Okay.
Instead, there's a list of things that are not the soul.
Right, okay.
Body is not soul.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Sensations are not soul.
Sure.
Perceptions
Yep.
are not soul. Mental fabrications are not soul. Sense consciousness is not soul.
Sure. Okay. The standard. Yeah.
Which is a big piece of the Buddhist teachings.
Sure.
A huge piece, chanted every morning and every night, and huge. So, if there was no soul, why would you break it down?
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Like that. So, I mean, that's the no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
And how come they can't see often the clash between the idea of rebirth and no soul?
Yeah, they have all kinds of intellectual, masturbation ways to...
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Can you explain some of the to me? Because I don't really know, what is some of the common ways people would discuss this? Because, as you know, I have a Buddhist teacher.
Yeah.
But he talks about the soul incessantly. That is the core fundamental thing of what he does.
Because the core of spirituality is spirit and soul.
Completely, yes. Yeah.
I don't care what tradition you're from.
Yes.
There's different ways to get there, but that is what attainment is. Right?
Yes.
It's about Christian, Buddhist,
sure.
Taoist, Hindu.
Yep.
Same.
Okay.
It's about spirit and soul. Right? So in Buddhism, the Buddha, in my opinion, is the greatest teacher of our so detailed, exceptional teacher. I'm not talking about levels of attainment or anything.
Yep.
Just a talented teacher. So he's describing all the things, the mistakes. Like me, he teaches in the negative. I like teaching in the negative. He taught in the negative. It's not this, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that.
Yeah.
Because to say what it is gives people a chance to fabricate, to imagine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Often the most skillful way to teach something is to say what it's not, steer away from this, go forward.
It's very much like Sherlock Holmes, strangely.
I think it's the right way to realize truth rather than have a painted on truth from the lineage. Right? So the Buddha says the khandhas or the skandhas are not self. Okay. Yep. That is an undeniable fact. He also says, what is nibbana? Nibbana is the purified citta.
Yep.
Right?
Could you describe citta for people?
Citta is soul.
Oh, right, sorry. I kind of ruined that. Okay, I get what you mean. Yeah, sure.
So I guess the Hindus would call it consciousness.
Sure.
Would be the translation. The way we view things, it would be closer to soul.
Right, okay, sure. Yes.
And then there's also the jnana, the consciousness. Okay. So when you purify the soul, that's nibbana.
Sure.
I mean, this is in the text.
I mean, that's why I was interested to have you describe it, because obviously my core tradition that I know the most closely would be Taoism, to which the soul is a very important part of what they were doing.
They have strange ideas about soul from my point of view. It's sort of pieces of the spirit and all this kind of stuff, right?
Well, actually, a lot of that's from Chinese medicine. Right. So actually, it's not so literal. It's a concept to try to help to explain how the soul carries out its various functions in this world, actually.
It's not the actual...
Yeah, within alchemy, it's different. Yeah. Like within the spiritual tradition, it's a consolidated thing. So it's a little different, but... there's an issue there as well, that I think a lot of the blanks have been filled in in Chinese arts with Chinese medicine.
They did it in Taiji, which is a disaster.
Completely, which to me they are separate things, right? Like they're different things.
Yeah.
Chinese medicine is the study of sickness, and the other things are the study of cultivation. And I know people say Chinese medicine is the study of health, but it's not. It's the study
you
of
have
sickness.
to achieve normalcy,
Yes.
aka health and
Yes.
other things.
Yeah.
Then you go into cultivation.
Completely. Yeah.
So the Buddha also says that there is a consciousness that is not bound up with the senses.
Okay.
So
that's a direct statement that's said in Buddhism?
It's in the canon.
Right, okay.
In the traditional Pali canon. When I say the Buddha says, it means in the Pali canon, the historical canon, that all of the Mahayana and Vajrayana agree this is what the historical Buddha said.
Yes.
So there is the spirit,
yes,
and there is the soul.
Okay.
However, nerds
yes,
and people that hate Christianity
that's very interesting. Yeah.
translate it
Yeah.
because, oh, my bad tradition, the other side of the hill is always greener.
Yeah.
Stupid. They don't realize Christianity is beautiful and extremely potent, and
Yes.
they just can't see it because they're teenagers, basically.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's that. So yes, of course. I mean,
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
and I mean, it's like there's also chi or prana is huge.
If you're not cultivating the soul, or connection to the soul, or whatever, you know,
That's how I would word it.
your connection to the soul, what are you cultivating? Would be my question for people that are trying to go into some kind of spiritual line or spiritual cultivation, because ultimately the other thing would be just to aim for complete eradication.
Well, I think there's spirit.
Well,
soul.
okay, sure, but I think they've got to be done sequentially. So even if you could realize the non-independent existence of the soul, you can't do that till you found the soul. It's like you can't write
First
about
step
what you
is-
can't do.
So first, let's say first awakening would
Yes.
be called something like self-realization.
Yeah.
Realizing the soul
Yes. Yeah.
in direct experience, not in theory.
Yes. And if you want to go further, that's cool.
Then it can go beyond that, but that's sort of like, it's a big deal.
It's like you can't see through the illusion of self unless your self is fairly well established.
Yes, I think you need a skillful ego.
Yeah.
The fabricated self needs to be skillful. At the same time, you know it's not the true self, not the soul spirit, but it needs to be skillful.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is, so what is that? That means sila, conduct, restraint. It means samadhi, right?
Yep.
And then you have wisdom, insight into what is not Atman. And if you know what is not Atman,
Yes.
what's left over?
Is Atman.
Very skillful teaching method. However, like all the great traditions, corrupted by dogmatists and politics and people. So yeah, I mean, I'm like an outcast probably in the Buddhist community because I say this, but I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree, which is why I brought it up, is that I think that for cultivators, if I use, I have my own definition for that term.
Same as me.
Yeah. I would always assume that the soul was kind of central, or the kind of orientating point around which all the other practices should take place for a very, very long time.
I think
For
soul
somebody.
and spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the difference then between, and this is something that sometimes gets me in trouble as well, is the difference between a religion and a cultivation system. And maybe we could look at, what's your opinion? I have my opinion what the difference between those two are,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you have your own as well.
I think religion is the cultivation system is the inner core of a tree, the hardwood.
Yeah.
The religion is the outer bark that protects the cultivation system.
Okay.
If you don't have the outer bark, the cultivation system will get lost.
Yes.
The monks, the dogmatists, the sutras, the scriptures, they carry the cultivation.
Sure.
It's needed.
Yeah.
It's also the sila, it's the conduct, it's the how to treat your wife, it's the basic function of society.
Yep.
100%, in my opinion, the great downfall of modern times is the turning away from religion.
Yeah.
I'm extremely pro-religion.
Yes.
Religion means devotion, love of God, and the desire to realize the ultimate. I'm religious.
Sure.
And it also means the desire to achieve yoga, to reunite. Yes, I'm religious. Do I follow the ritual and do I bang the donga and like chant and do that kind of religion.
You've got to bang the gongs.
I don't. I'm pro-religion. I think most people should follow religion. I'm extremely positive about religion. That's
my definition of religion. So when I say that I'm religious, what I mean is I am intent on achieving union with the creative energy or spirit.
That's what religion means in English.
Yes. Yeah. What I have no interest in is the
gong.
The gong. Mostly because I got no rhythm, so it's just embarrassing. Actually,
I think you have more than I do.
Dong, 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 dong. I have done a bit of it actually. When I was in China originally, when I went there, I was exploring what to do, and like many people, I had good teachers, and then I had gaps where I didn't have good teachers.
Yeah, how it goes.
The bleak searching eras, and I ended up in many of the same places that many others do. White Cloud Temple, Beijing, places like this, and Wudang, and I.
The cosplay masters.
That's the skeleton in my closet, you know. But so I tried these things, and I got involved in all that kind of stuff for a little bit, and I just very quickly realized that to me wasn't. I understood why other people could get value from it.
I think devotion is incredibly powerful.
But I think what it gave is belonging. That's all.
That's part of it. I would say that. I don't think that's all, but I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's. But I think if you're a cultivator, I think part of your mission is to get past that.
No, it's good for the masses.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
You need tribe. Yeah. People need tribe.
Yes.
Not the person on the fringe that we were talking about before. Yeah. The cultivator doesn't need tribe, but everyone else needs the tribe. And I think it's a great mistake to criticize.
Yes.
Or to take away or to downplay the importance of tribe and unity through belief and all that kind of thing.
But I think the cultivator should try to see through that and go deeper
without destroying
towards the core. Yeah. Yep.
Although absolutely.
I got that monkey spirit, you know.
Hanuman.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I think that at the moment,
what's right for you is not right for that guy over there.
Yeah, but at the moment there is a concerted effort to try to pull people into that. It's like there's a...
No, I think there's a concerted effort to destroy religion.
I mean, within the traditions, like especially within Taoism, part of the reason I've had to make a very pointed thing of saying I have to step out of Taoism, I'm not Taoist, is because
but
that
I'm not
to
Buddhist.
me is what it's become. Yeah, completely, right?
I use Buddhist methods, I use Taoist methods, I use Chan methods, I use Hindu methods, I love practice.
But I think the cultivator should step out of the traditions as well.
Of course.
I think all cultivators should step out of the traditions.
They don't have to necessarily do it externally.
No.
You might appear in the tradition, but you're actually not.
But can you do it in the blue nylon garbs? Can you? That's the question.
I think you could do it in the orange robes, but not the blue nylon garbs.
If you're in the blue nylon garbs, you can't sit too close to the fireplace, that's for sure. They're like bell suits from the 80s. Children were dying left, right, and centre.
So I think Taoism's worse because it's like a lost religion.
I agree. Well,
so it's
been be a religion.
No, but neither should Buddhism really.
No.
But at least Buddhism has a proper lineage and it's been like carried on and it's traditional.
Yeah.
Taoism's sort of rebuilt and fabricated and modern and weird and.
I just don't see how it could become...
It's meant to be a cultivation method.
Exactly. It couldn't be a religion because it was never based around the idea of a central god.
No.
So therefore there was nothing to use that devotional kind of... I know it's a funny use of the word bhakti, but a kind of bhakti energy to unify with that original thing that is higher than you.
I agree, and I think bhakti is awesome.
Yeah.
For a certain type.
Yep.
I think bhakti is incredibly potent, and if I could change my type, I would have more bhakti.
If you weren't from the convict island.
Yes, I would have more bhakti. I wish I did. But I don't. So I have to go the path of cultivation. I think bhakti is incredibly potent. I'm not anti-bhakti. I'm extremely pro. I think it's a great alchemy. It transforms all the normal emotion into something spiritual.
Exactly. That's it, what you said. Emotion. To me, it's the path of emotion, right?
Yeah, but for people like you and me, emotion is like you don't deal with emotion. Emotion is not part of cultivation.
It may come as a surprise to you, but bhakti doesn't suit me either.
No.
Not particularly.
But I'm pro. I think it's beautiful.
I'm often envious of, and it does generate envy, literal envy.
I think it's actually the fastest path for most people.
I'm envious of two types. I'm envious of very devotional people, and I'm envious of people that are just happy watching a football match on a Sunday and then They're content with their life.
The bhakti and the simpleton.
Totally. They don't have to do any grind, any effort. If their football team wins, they're happy.
But for you and myself, it's grind, day in and day out.
I know.
Because that's the path of cultivation.
Yes.
Which, funnily enough, is the path that the people that are the source of the bhakti traditions tread.
It's the key line within the Tao Te Ching to me. Everyone always has their key lines. The
Tao
that can't be named. Whatever. The key one to me is embrace the boring. That's it. That is the epitome of the cultivational path contained within the Tao Te Ching to me. Embrace the boring.
I can't deny it.
That's it. And this is like one of the key pieces of advice that I give to not to most people who come, but the ones that are serious.
The real workers.
The real workers, is I tell them, you have to learn to defeat boredom. You have to get to a stage where boredom does not arise in you anymore. Boredom is like a child tugging at your sleeve, asking for sweets. And if you don't give into it, you embrace the boring, it ends.
I always tell them, you just have to learn to love it.
Yeah.
You have to learn to love it.
And if you can't do that, just have whiskey after the training and reward yourself.
So yeah, I think this is the fundamental problem with Buddhism, is I think what happened, honestly, is a bunch of anti-Christian people, probably British,
probably,
went to probably Southeast Asia.
Yep.
And they tried to translate the text from a Christian conditioning. And they saw this is not soul, and they're like, yay, I get to rebel, I'm still a teenager at heart. And that's what happened.
It's funny, I see that anti-Christian thing moving into the Taoist lines, and that's why Taoism, the religious Taoism, becomes so important to them, because religious Taoism is almost Christianity.
They should stick with Christianity.
But it's not Christian. I agree.
Christianity, in my opinion, is uniquely powerful in regards to religion. For the component of what would you call it? The surrender of the personal will to God. I think Christianity has it to a profound degree. The humility is profound in Christianity. I think it's one of the great paths. I really do. I rate Christianity very highly. I'm extremely pro, and I think it's a mistake the way people are anti it.
Once you become old enough to not be a choir boy, you're at no risk, and I think Christianity has its strengths. The two.
But yeah, the choir boy and the kids getting arrested. But like the monks with the.
No, it's no
with
different.
With the crack or whatever, and
totally.
It's the same in every organization.
With the crack, which I should say, for those of you who don't know, is an isolated part of Thailand, wasn't it?
It was in Thailand.
It was in Thailand. It's not 90% of. Well, it's probably close to 90% of monks, maybe, but.
I mean, it's the Kali Yuga.
The two most powerful power spots, whatever you want to call them, on earth I've ever been to, religious places, temples, one of which was a monastery in Bhutan, very recently actually. No, I should say a temple in Bhutan. It's not a monastery. A temple in Bhutan, super powerful, like knocked you for six, made you feel sick and nauseous, vomiting.
Like the proper spots too. Yeah.
Like a proper, powerful, man. And the only other one I've been to that is anywhere near that strength was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Israel and Jerusalem,
which is based where the Christ.
I got the name wrong, probably the cave where they put Christ's body prior to his resurrection, and it's the first time.
So no wonder that's a power spot. I mean,
it's funny. You go in there and you're supposed to go into, and I went to Jerusalem, which is actually a bit of a dump, which will probably get me in trouble with all kinds of religions now, but it's actually a little bit of a dump. And you go to Jerusalem.
Every holy place is a dump. Completely.
What is that? I don't know. So you get there, and then you're supposed to just sort of get in the cave, get out the cave, which is, they built a church on top of it. Yeah, but when I got there, there was some kind of there was a siren going, like there was some kind of bomb scare in Jerusalem, so everybody got out. So I had,
perfect.
It was really good. I have a habit of turning up at a place when everyone else is not there.
Blessed.
So I went and got to sit in the resurrection cave, or whatever you call it, for a period of time.
It would be a very powerful place.
After half an hour. A lot of yin chi. Only half an hour I was there, not very long. I came out. It was the closest I've ever felt compassion.
Yeah.
Because
the
blissful,
the love in Christianity is
it was overwhelming, deep. Radiating out of me.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, it was gone. But for those 5 minutes when I came
this is what it feels like to be a bhakti.
Completely. Yeah, it was gone. So I went back in and no, it didn't work again. But it was a very nice experience for 5 minutes. So I get it.
I'm a huge fan of Christianity. I really am.
Yeah.
It's, the two places I live, Thailand and Greece.
Mm.
The most devout Buddhist and the most devout Christian. Because I like to be around society based on religion.
Yeah.
And I like connecting to the power of those traditions.
Yes.
I think they're incredibly potent.
There's a side to everyone's nature that wants recognition for being amazing at something.
Sure.
I think that's normal.
Yeah.
So I get it.
But I agree.
Yeah.
But there's a modicum of shame that I have that's kind of overwhelming.
It is, yes. Shame is a funny thing.
I'm pro-shame, by the way.
Me too. Well, so were most religions.
Well, the Buddha uses the word shame massively.
Christianity.
Yeah, they're really similar, actually.
Shame is self-feeling shame.
Recognizing your soul.
Completely. It's when it's when the conscience isn't happy because you're moving away from what the soul wants, right? Yeah. More over towards the mind, which has its greedy kind of aims. No, I think shame is a healthy quality.
People are always like, you shouldn't have shame.
It's only when it cripples you to a point that it's...
That's guilt.
Yeah.
The Buddha is really critical of guilt and really pro-shame, which is interesting.
Okay.
Like your acquaintances and your teachers and your wife and all that.
Yes. Yes.
And people like your close students that are beyond student level.
Yeah.
Your loved ones.
But then students.
No, I feel like I would definitely feel Andy or Curtis or any of those guys would pull me up. They're past student.
Maybe a couple of my students would.
It's we've been together for a long time. There's still a level of the studentness, but they still would call me out. We argue about stuff, they call me out.
I have the biggest shamer in my life, which is called the mirror. That does it for me anyway. I'm very good at walking past the mirror and going, "You've been a twat lately." That's good enough for me.
Yeah, I don't have that trigger. I'm a little less.
I have to be able to live with myself, and I think that maybe a lot of people don't have to, or they don't, like, that's not a problem to them or something, so they can make these grandiose claims. Example being, for example,
I don't do that, do I? You have to call me out if I ever am like that.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah. We'll finish
privately.
We'll finish a bottle of whiskey and then
it'll all come out.
No, I remember on Facebook someone wrote, have you ever used your Taiji to defend yourself in a life or death situation? To which I
don't know what life or death means.
But I would have thought hardly anyone answered, right? Yeah. It was like 150 responses, and they were like sort of grown men in their 50s going, yeah, last week I had to use it to stop a mugger who was going to stab me, so I warded it off, and then I did a rollback, nearly killed him, and the whole crowd cheered. And then I
told you last night how much I've used mine.
Yeah.
It's not much.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I fought more than most of those guys.
Well, you weren't on the thread. I didn't see the story. Yeah, when I read down it was. I think for me that moment was I came to realize
I have no shame,
and also that the martial art world is a world of fantasists.
But it's not. You always say this, and I always take it. I think it's a mistake because it's not the martial art world. It's the world.
Oh, you're probably true. You're probably right.
It's just because you're involved in that world.
Take
a look at the Neigong world.
Everybody in my world does Neigong or martial arts.
Yeah, but okay, look at the political world. Look at
sure.
It's just the world.
So how are they not ashamed? You know what I mean? If I typed something like that, I did blah, 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 I would feel ashamed. I would feel ashamed of myself for typing
If I have shame, it's pretty devastating.
Okay.
When I have it. Because I don't have it much. I'm kind of sociopathic. But when I have it, it's pretty heavy. I can't sleep. It's everything.
Yeah, same.
It becomes my world. I haven't had that many times, I must admit. I'm pretty conscious about things.
Well, that's the job of the conscience, right?
Yeah.
Jiminy Cricket, to make sure you don't do such things. So now you've been in Ubud.
Ubud is the land of shame. It's fucked up. I'm happy that I live in a secular, an isolated version with you, because I honestly have never seen more wow, it's awesome.
If I were kind, I would say, which I am kind, I would say Ubud is the town of the spiritually enthusiastic. That's kind, right?
Enthusiastic implies no conscience, because when you're enthusiastic, you forget yourself.
I didn't say they're spiritually achieved, but I think it's, yeah, I mean, it's an odd town. For those people listening who don't know what Ubud is, it's a...
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, did you think this was being cut?
I thought we were just chatting. Yeah,
yeah, Ubud is a town of kind of spiritual hippies and people finding themselves that have come here for yoga, I would guess.
It's not yoga, it's like
yoga
parties.
Well, modern yoga.
No union involved.
Well, sexual union is involved.
Well, I'm pro, but I mean, it's got nothing to do with spirituality.
No, I mean, it is. Almost every practice that they do comes down to sex in the end, from what I can make out. That's what it is. It doesn't matter what they wrap it up in. Like, this is the outer trimmings. It comes down to sex.
I'm not anti-sex, but it's the basic part of your person.
I'm anti being part of a spiritual tradition.
So am I.
Right.
Because my version of it is...
Yeah.
The highest part of you is like your calling to God.
Yeah.
The lowest part of you is your calling to procreation, protection, your lower chakra,
fear,
your higher chakra.
Survival. Yeah.
If you try to bring your lower chakra up to your higher chakra,
yes,
you corrupt your spiritual calling.
Yes.
And so what happens is that what was a true intent becomes corrupt. Mm-hmm. You corrupt the best part of you. And I think that's what happens to the gurus.
Okay. Including some of the famous ones, huh?
Absolutely. And I don't think they mean it. And I don't think they're bad. I don't. I just think it's a mistake.
In Chinese, we call it poison fire affecting the heart. Poison fire being the fire that's generated from sexual or base desires that rise up towards the spirit.
It's past the heart.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it comes to the consciousness. And the high, I think there's like a draw from your spirit soul. Mm-hmm. And there's a draw from your fabricated self-ego. Mm-hmm. And there's a draw from your body. Mm-hmm. And when they're in alignment, that's integrity. And that's the path.
Yeah, that's an interesting definition, yeah.
And every time that you deviate from that alignment, which we all do, is a kind of deviation from the path, and it's natural, the path isn't straight. That's what my tattoo means, by the way.
Okay.
Like this, right? Mm-hmm. So when you use the lowest part of your being,
yes,
and you try to make it part of the highest part, you corrupt.
Yeah.
And only disaster is going to come.
On that note, I think that's a good conclusion to our talk, actually. I think I would like to say thank you very much for being on this podcast.
Thank you, my friend.
Coming out for the month, and also for being a great friend. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Bless you.